Very good morning. Hope you're doing well and safe. So a little bit of context to what Harish has spoken so far, the collaborative experience, making the discoverability of your business process easier inside teams. That's going to be the theme. With that in mind, we have one end-to-end scenario, which is going to empower the recruiting experiences, and that's going to be thought through of how we're going to do this inside of teams, right? Now, quickly moving on, what I'm going to be having is an end-to-end experience, which means there are a couple of processes that we would have today, and all of these would be happening in silos. We're going to reimagine what it would take for us to build this end-to-end inside of teams, making it more collaborative, enabling different people from different backgrounds to, work closely inside of teams, right? Now, when it comes to recruitment, there are ideally three key personas that come to mind. One of that is the hiring manager. Second one is the recruiter and the whole HR team who's going to facilitate all of the logistics and processes. And third one is going to be the candidates who are going to be interviewing for these roles, right? So broadly, broadly these activities are classified in four buckets. First one is, the hiring manager and the recruiters talking about the JDs, talking about the number of posts that are vacant. Moving on to, they would be analyzing few candidates, whoever is going to apply through those JDs, which is followed by the interview process if the candidates are shortlisted from the initial analysis. And once the candidate goes through the series of interviews, what it would mean to, prepare and roll out the offer, and all of that, keeping in mind, a collaborative canvas in mind, right? So I'm going to be walking us over the entire series of how this information is planned. So I'm going to be double clicking more on how each of these scenario is thought through. I'm also keeping my eye on the chat in case if you have any questions, feel free to drop your question out there as well.
Awesome.
So,
Hey, and Srinidhi, I had a question. So this is just one idea, right? Because every organization might do recruitment processes differently.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that's a great point, Harish. Yes, it is one of the ways in which how we can enable all of the different personas to, do their process seamlessly on teams. However, there could be different angles to it, which is very specific to certain organizations that we could definitely, talk through or walk through depending on their organization as well.
Awesome.
Now, given that this is going to be end-to-end without any delay, I'm going to be continuing in each of the individual aspects to see how team is going to be really collaborative and empowering in the ways. Now, quickly moving on to the first process, which is typically where the hiring manager is going to be talking to the recruiter to sort of share the JDs, how the JDs would work, and once they finalize on the job description that needs to be posted, the number of positions, there's going to be a message action which the recruiter is sort of going to use to post this message. And now once this, this is going in a loop and I'm having a slight lag in it, so just pardon me for this. Right, so once the recruiter is sort of going to finalize what the job offer is, they would have an ability to post this directly on your career website or on the LinkedIn page of your organization directly from within Teams. This is going to obviously ensure that they're going to miss out on all the loops where they'd have to manually go upload this in your career site or be dependent on so many other people to get this job done. The hiring manager or the recruiter can directly go and do this. Now, once they do this, this is also the system is also going to be providing the notification to the hiring managers as well as the recruiters to sort of intimate them that their job posting has been done. They can either click on the organization's website and then we can view it on the LinkedIn, so on and so forth. This is basically going to ensure that the first bit is done, which is the hiring manager and the recruiter collaborating to get the job description out in a much more collaborative fashion. Now, quickly moving on to the next aspect of it, which is going to be once the job is posted on different websites, there are going to be series of applicants or applications that's going to come in. How is this really going to be streamlined inside of Teams? Is essentially there is going to be a notification that's going to intimate the recruiter as well as the hiring manager to sort of say, hey, you have so many people applied on this, and the minute that they're going to click on view candidates, it's going to open in a canvas that Harish was talking about, which is the tab experience where the hiring manager can sort of go look at the people who have applied, look at their profile, a mini resume, you could imagine, right hand side of Teams, and they would have an option to add this person as a part of the interview loop so that they can be considered for the next round of information or round of interviews that they'd want to go through, or even otherwise they get to see a list of candidates that that have applied, right? And there is certain backend AIML which could power how much of the skill is matched, what is the variety of candidates who are applying, and then obviously when they click on view details, you could click on view more details, and then we could add them on the interview loop as well, right? So once the candidate has been added to the interview loop, obviously the next process is going to be that it's not going to be one hiring manager and one recruiter working to hire candidates. It's it's ultimately going to be a pool of interviewers on one end wanting to talk to people and hire them. So we can also have an option or an ability to choose teams or the hiring panel of sorts to enable this entire interview loop sort of creation, right? So what we have seen so far is basically the hiring managers talking with the recruiters setting out and sending this information on the career and LinkedIn page, and then people are starting to apply. We are also have received a pool of candidates who are ready to be interviewed, and at this stage we are setting up a hiring panel. Now what happens once the hiring panel has been set up is finding time for each of these hiring members in the hiring panel is a huge challenge, right? So imagine if Aryak and Harish are in the hiring panel and I'm the recruiter who's trying to coordinate for their time. Most often than not, it's going to be a very huge task, and I have to follow up on their calendar, block some time in advance. Sorry, Harish, my cursor is not moving. Could you go to the next slide? Awesome. Yeah. So this is typically going to be where, finding a shared availability for the interview panel is going to be a huge task. So here is where we again empower this right within Teams. Now, all the hiring panel members are added to a part of Teams channel where they're going to be talking about all the consecutive steps that's going to happen, right? And that's going to start from them, having the members in the hiring panel. And sorry, Harish, my cursor is not moving again. If you could click on the video, right. So basically, so the interviewer or the recruiter could look into the shared calendar, schedule interview, and when they schedule an interview, this is going to be an email template that's going to sort of go out to the employee, wherein they can fill in the time slot, choose a time slot, and they're ready to be interviewed for, right? So that's basically going to be getting all of these people together in one common place and enabling all of this, shared calendar experiences, or making the whole, experience seamless when it comes to having an interview panel ready to interview candidates. Now, quickly moving on to the next screen. Sorry, Harish, I'm going to request for access again. Now, one more information bit of it is once the interview has been scheduled,
One question I had put in chat box. Which plugin are you using here?
So these are combination of applications, Tapan, not really one end-to-end application. The idea is how we are surfacing this in Teams, which is the focus over here. The apps or the backend integrations are something that could be of your own today, right? Like say, for example, if you are having some application for your hiring process, we could very well, integrate that with Teams. The more idea is focused on how does it look more collaborative and how can we collaborate with other members as well in Teams, and that's the primary focus here.
Sure.
Awesome. Before I move on to the next bit, all the recruiters are going to get notified about the upcoming interview that they are a part of along with the interview panel. They can acknowledge their presence, which means they're accepting to interview the candidate. They would have an option to swap it. If they want to view the resume of the candidate that they're going to look at, they could directly do here. The idea of the mobile screen here is just to reiterate the fact that any app that we build on Teams today is device agnostic. And what it means is you can access these applications from anywhere, across any devices and OS, right? So quickly moving on, Harish, please, if you could go to the next screen. I'm very sorry. Yeah. So before the whole interview process starts, there's going to be a canvas where the hiring manager and the recruiter can sort of go look at the timeline of who has been the previous people who have interviewed this particular candidate, and if they want to add a series of questions that they would want to ask the candidate, there is a provision to add that as well. So earlier, like whenever we sort of do recruiting, there's going to be a bunch of questions that's going to be made available in our internal portal. We'd have to sort of go to that portal via our browser, access these questions, and then ask the interviewer as a part of the candidate. I'm sorry, can you go back? Yeah, so as the candidate as a part of the interview. So to cut that short and to make it more seamless, we would have an ability, when I say we, the interviewer would have an ability to add all of the questions that they want. And when the candidate is on the meeting bridge, they can directly ask these questions to the candidate and rate how confident or how good the candidate is on a certain aspect of it, right? So this is basically a meeting tab, and we are adding this particular tab as a part of the meeting invite that we have already sent out with the candidate. Quickly moving on to the next bit. This is an interesting aspect where today we know we are all part of the Teams meeting that we have, and then whenever the candidate comes on the meeting bridge, the hiring manager will have a panel on the left rail, and this is usually what we call as meeting extensibility panel, wherein they would be able to go ahead and Harish, if you could pause, if you could pause there. So the meeting interviewer can sort of go and look into the resume, peer feedback that they have sort of received from the previous interviewers who have been interviewing this particular candidate, and then they could also rate the candidate depending on the questions that they answered, and also add a comment to say, okay, this candidate is very good, etc. If you could just scroll a little back on this video, there's one interesting aspect that a lot of our customers have asked, which is basically the facial recognition aspect of it, right? So a lot of times, because it's the remote environment and we are continuing to hire on remote, there's also some facial recognition aspect of it, which comes as a verification part to sort of understand and validate whether the candidate that we're talking to is them the real person, or is there any issues or trouble that we're having with the candidate who's on record versus the candidate who comes on the call to attend these interviews as well. So all of these are pretty interesting aspect of meeting extensibility, and this is the newest of our capabilities when it comes to surfacing any of your application inside of Teams meeting and working on that application in real time as the meeting is progressing.
I love this because I feel like there's going to be, it's so real, right? So while you're inside an interview, you have all the context right there within the meeting itself. Anything related to the candidate, their information, and of course, you're also filling out feedback and rating the candidate, which is again, I think it'll go back to where other members of the hiring panel can also immediately have a look at, right? This is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's more real time. And one more focus that I want to talk is how, it reduces a lot of context switching, right? I don't have to continuously be mindful about 2-3 apps that I'm going to use day in and day out. It's all there inside of Teams for me to do my work, right? Now, quickly moving on to the next bit of it, which is going to be the the hiring manager. So once after the interview is done, here is where the interviewer as well as the recruiting team, they're going to have back and forth conversation to sort of zero down on the candidates. And here is where we use what we call as message extension to pull out the list of candidates that are in the information loop or in the interview loop. And once we have finalized on a candidate and the offer, and they're good to go with respect to offer, we could schedule another round of interviews, or we could just pull out their information and start sending them out their offer letters and information and so on. In this particular screen, it's going to be just about how the employee, for example, if a particular interview needs to be rescheduled, and if the interviewer want to sort of intimate that to the recruiting team, they can do that as a part of team and channel as well. Now, once the feedback has been received by the interviewer that, okay, this candidate is good to go, we recommend them that they get hired, the recruitment team can directly update the view offer package over here. And Harish, if you could click on the video. Yeah, so here is where there are templatized task modules that are already available, wherein the recruiter, all they would have to do is just match, fill in the terms and condition, update it, and this is going to be sent out as an email to the candidate with all of these information as well, right? And all of this is done within Teams. There is again no need to context switch to Outlook or any other mail that you're using to send out these offer letters to the candidate. Now, once the offer is made, this can be made, with the help of, imagine a DocuSign or an Adobe Sign, because, we are all in virtual world, and, the candidate is just going to sign the offer letter and going to send it back. Now, once they send the offer letter back, and as soon as they accept the offer, right, which would take us to the next screen, the information gets updated in real time as and when they sign it. And this is very, very important, and something that's really cool, right? Because now the interviewer or the recruiter, they need not go hunting on a particular tool to sort of know, hey, has a candidate updated, have they really signed in, what's the status day in and day out. As in when the candidates are going to accept the interview, the recruiter and the interviewer, they're going to get notified about it. And also another important thing that can be programmatically configured is, right, as in when the positions get filled in, the bot is going to remind us to sort of say, hey, these positions are now filled in. You might want to remove these posts from all of the career sites and the LinkedIn pages, that this post is being made to, right? More often than not, a lot of people end up applying for roles that are already closed, and that's because there's always a never-ending gap between updating a particular job position to when the job position actually gets closed, right? So that is typically this end-to-end process. This can also be slightly extended, which takes us to the next bit of it, which is the whole onboarding flow, right? Now, what happens once the candidate is accepted the offer, they're ready to join in, they can come into Teams, they can get access into Teams, and they would have a whole onboarding app in itself, wherein they can start a bunch of tasks or bunch of work that they need to do, and they're not completely lost because it's day one and they needed some sort of guided experience to sort of navigate the entire new organization and how it is. And this onboarding bot or an onboarding tool is going to help them help their first day into the organization a great experience, right? So
hey, Hari and Harish, I'm just going to voice a common question coming in the chat. So folks want to understand, so if we have an existing application that does some of this, how do I integrate that with Teams? How do we bring something or a part of this to life?
Awesome. Thanks, Adi, and thanks everybody for that question. And idea is, it's going to be pretty straightforward, and integration is very much possible depending on. So this is an entire end-to-end journey, right? And depending on which area you want to sort of focus first, we can try and understand what is the backend that you have, and then try and see if there are relevant APIs which we can sort of integrate with inside this particular application. And once that's done, it's going to be pretty straightforward to get this experience on Teams, and also updating the system that you have in backend in real time.
So just to summarize and take away, and I think I love that on each of the slide, you also had these integration touch points at the bottom. So essentially what we are saying is these experiences to the end user, be it in chat, in the meeting, in the channel, notifications, right? And all the power of that platform that's there is integrated with one or more of these systems if they are relevant APIs available. And this can be brought into that context of the flow using the power of the Teams platform with like adaptive cards, tabs, and so on, correct?
Absolutely. So because every organization uses a different application, right, for their recruitment activities and their hiring process. So, and depending on what part of the entire process, what Srinidhi has shown is the end-to-end flow itself. But if we want to solve for the end-to-end flow and bring all the context in so that your recruitment team is able to manage the entirety of it within Teams and collaborate right here, we can. Or we can focus on specific portions of it where we can build out those integrations with the application that you already use so that you get the context and the information within Teams and you're able to, in return, push back information and update those systems.
And just follow up here is that this sort of manifestation that you walked us through, of course, it is one way to design it, right?
Yes.
And it's totally as per the way you would bring in the process would be how it is done today for a specific organization, and you can use these components. And this was just one of the manifestations.
Yeah. This is just an imagination of how collaborative, the entire recruitment process can be. Every organization might have different workflows or different approval processes, a particular way in which it needs to be done. And we can certainly build around that to ensure that there is compliance while there's collaboration.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is a great art of possible, and with that, I think the scenario 1 is done. And thanks so much, everybody, for a very engaging chat thread. I look to answer a few of those, as and when it comes in. Thanks, Harish. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Okay, Srinidhi, there were a few questions if you would like to address those, and primarily one around. Can you touch upon some of the technical aspects? Maybe if you have a reference architecture that anyone who's interested in this could use.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in the same presentation, we do have an architecture diagram. Just in the interest of time, I have sort of hid it, but happy to walk those through to the architecture diagram to sort of give an overview of how we have thought through the scenarios. Yeah, so Harish, if you could pull that architecture diagram.
Sure. There you go.
Yeah, so this is a very simplified way of how we have put this screens together. There are a lot of talking points, touch points. There are different personas who are talking to one bot that is centrally available on Teams. There are different ways how information is surfaced into this particular application. One of that is bot message extension. Another one is a web app, which we saw as a part of the tab. And then how each of this system interact with your main recruitment app services, which involves various backend, right? It could have, a particular application that runs specifically for interviews. It could have particular application that are for feedbacks. And there are so many other tools as well, which is standalone, that are sort of feeding into these recruitment app services, right? One of them is your whole place or database where you're having all of your candidate information, employee database, your interview Q&A, and then there are also a few other, integration points, like the way how we communicate back to the interviewees, right? Like it could be a third-party SMS, it could be, any other gateway integrations, and all the items that you see on the screen could be a system that you use today of your own, right? It could be a success factor, it could be any other third-party HR tools that you're using for each of these line items, and depending on a little bit of technical feasibility check, we would be able to integrate all of that and surface it inside of Teams, right? So that's the high-level overview. I'd love to double-click on any of the places that we want, either in a one-on-one conversation or in any other places, but this is just a very high-level architecture of how the entire system works end-to-end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Srinidhi.